Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. Welcome in to the Week 16 episode of the Lions Grid. I'm your host, Kevin Marhani, coming to you today live with COVID. So I do apologize for the sound of my voice and if I cough during the program, but we won't let COVID stop us. We're not going to be out of this game with illness. We will be taking a look today at the Detroit Lions versus the Carolina Panthers, and also taking a look towards the end of the episode about what it means moving forward for the Lions. What they're in the midst of a playoff push, what needs to happen today to help that work out, and also potentially help them get a top 2 pick in next year's draft with that pick they acquired from the Rams for the Matthew Stafford trade. As mentioned, this is the Lions Grid. We're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So if you do enjoy the show today, make sure you do like, follow, or subscribe to us on whichever one of those channels is your favorite. Just search the Lions Grid. You'll be able to stay up to date with all the latest episodes, including Monday's recap. We'll take a Christmas Day off, but we'll talk on Monday about the outcome of today's game, and take a look at where the Lions sit. But without further ado, let's jump into today's game about the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers. Got Joe there on Facebook saying, "Let's go Detroit Lions." I'm there with you, Joe. Let's continue this playoff push. They've looked like a completely different team since they've been on this winning streak. And we're looking and hoping that they'll continue that today because, as we've sort of been talking about the playoff push here on the Lions Grid, we've talked about the best way or the best position the Lions can put themselves in, because they don't necessarily control their own fate, but is to win the rest of their games. And so far, they've won all of their games. So if they continue that here today against the Panthers, that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping they go down to Carolina, down to North. It always confused me. They're the Carolina Panthers. I'm off the top of my head, I'm not sure which one they play in. They play in North Carolina. They play in Charlotte. So, but we'll talk about that. That's interesting. It's a southern state. You'd think they'd have warmer weather. We'll get to that because that might be one of the things that impacts today's game down at Bank of America Stadium. But really, one of the keys to the success, we've talked about it week after week here on the Lions Grid, the thing that has really helped the Lions on this winning streak, that has helped them turn their season around, is their ability to have a positive turnover differential. And I think that's going to be very important as we continue and we come into this game against the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers have a surprisingly good defense. Yes, they've traded away Christian McCaffrey. Yes, they've had sort of a revolving door at quarterback. And if you've been a fantasy owner of some of the skill position players down there in Carolina, I'm sure that you've been upset with their performance this year. But that defense is surprisingly good. One of the things that the Lions have done a tremendous job over the 6-1 winning streak is they've been limiting the amount of turnovers they've had on offense, and while simultaneously generating them on defense. Jared Goff has done a fantastic job, and he's the only quarterback this season who has started 6 games and not turned the ball the last 6 games and not turn the ball over. So he's doing, in particular, a fantastic job of making smart plays with the ball. And we're going to need Jared Goff to do that again today, because as we'll talk about a little later, the weather isn't the greatest. You're going up against the strength of a team that is their defense, so they're going to look to try and take the ball away, and you're playing in weather conditions that aren't the greatest. We're going to need Jared Goff to continue to do what he's been doing, which is making really good use of the ball and making sure that this Lions offense is being successful. And part of that is also making sure that when you have a chance and you're in the red zone, they struggled with this a little bit last week where they had to take a couple of field goals from inside that were 30 yards away, ending drives in touchdowns and not field goals. When you're playing good teams, and the Panthers are sitting there at 5-9, so they're arguably not a good team, but their defense, I promise you, is good. You do have to end drives in touchdowns and not field goals, because the difference is when you're scoring field goals, you let those teams linger around, and when you let teams linger and they're close to you and they're within striking distance, that's when bad things can happen. So, looking for the Lions to again continue what they've been doing, have that positive turnover differential where they're taking care of the ball and forcing the other team to make mistakes, and then when they have those opportunities, ending drives and touchdowns and not field goals. If they can do those two things, and those two things are universal for good football teams, it's not specific just to the Lions. But what's been really exciting over this winning streak is the Lions have been doing those two things. That's how you win football games. And the Lions have been winning a lot of football games. So hopefully we'll continue to see the Lions do that. And one of the things that we've also been seeing is those defensive playmakers for the Lions step up. We've seen Aiden Hutchinson, we've seen Houston, who I believe is on James Houston is on a what is it? I'm taking a look here. Sorry, at my notes. He's on a four games sacks record. He's got one sack in all four of his games so far this season. So we'll have to see if he can continue that up. Um, Sam Darnold last week against the Steelers was sacked, or sorry, over the last 2 weeks has been sacked 6 times, including 4 times last week against the Steelers. So the Panthers are a team that does give up sacks, and we'll have to see if James Houston can get in there, keep his streak alive. Also look for Aiden Hutchinson to get in the backfield, and really just been impressed by the rookies so far for the Lions this season because they have been finding ways to contribute and really make some differences there. Now we talked about the weather. Here in Michigan, there was I think people were rushing to the store, buying out you know groceries and everything, supplies because we were supposed to get a huge snowstorm. It's all been part of that bomb cyclone that has affected the majority of the country over the last couple of days, and that does include North Carolina and Charlotte, where this game is being played at Bank of America Stadium. And it's actually going to be the lowest home game temperature uh, that the Panthers have ever had. It's going to be it's going to reach a high of 26 around 1 p.m. and the wind chill is going to make it feel like 11 degrees. And again, this game is being played in North Carolina, so it's going to be a cold, frigid game. Not something that the Panthers are used to. They've only actually played uh, this is the first game in their own stadium they've played below freezing, and this is only the seventh game in their franchise history that they've played in temperatures. Excuse me, that low. So definitely something that's going to be impacting the Panthers. Of course, we know the Lions being up here in Michigan, but playing inside at Ford Field. The weather can certainly be a factor here. I'm not going to doubt the Lions' toughness because I know Dan Campbell and the Lions team, they're tough. They've proven it. You don't go from 1-6 to the first half of your season to 6-1 to the next half without having some toughness and some resiliency. So we certainly expect them to be able to do it, but it's going to be cold, and that's going to impact players. It's going to be something to keep an eye on, and it's when you get hit, it's going to hurt more, bigger potential for turnovers. So it's gonna be there in the back of the player's mind. Hopefully, everyone can sort of put themselves in the right mindset, sort of negate that, and we won't see that be too big of an issue. But it's going to be downright chilly in Carolina for this game, so something to keep an eye on there. And when you have that combination of you're playing a good defense and the weather conditions aren't right, the thing that may help decide this game is the ability to find explosive plays. Last week they were playing a Jets defense who was, again, another surprisingly good defense, a playoff caliber defense that's on a team that may or may not make it there. And it really came down to that late play to Brock Wright, the 51-yard touchdown pass. Getting that play was really what helped put the Lions over the hump against that team, a team that was lingering around, a good opponent, sort of sticking around. The Lions had the lead and they were trading back and forth, but it was one of those things where until they hit that big play, it was the Jets were there. So in this game against the Panthers, big plays are probably going to be few to come by. So being able to hit on them is going to be big for the Lions again this week. Obviously, I think the more reliable ways are making sure that you mitigate your own turnovers and force the opponent to, and then end drives and touchdowns and not field goals. But sort of the third thing that you need, which is a little bit of luck involved, is hitting big plays. And I think the Lions will need that here today. As again, they're playing a tough defense in cold weather. But really, the Lions have shown that they are a team that can do those essentials that all good teams can do. And really, I'm excited for this game against the Panthers. The Panthers realistically have a better shot of making the playoffs by being the NFC South's representative as opposed to challenging the Lions and the other teams for one of the two remaining wildcard spots in the NFC. But it's not a team you want to sleep on. I think the Detroit Lions should definitely be favored in this game. They're my pick to win this game. But we've seen Sam Darnold since he's come in and sort of stepped in at the quarterback for the Panthers. He's added some stability to that offense. They've been really good at running the football. since he's been there. But the Lions, surprisingly, have been really good at shutting down the run in the last few weeks. Justin Jefferson was able to go crazy in terms of yardage last season or last week against the Lions, but they were able to hold that team to, I think, 20 something team yards rushing. So if you can see the Lions come out here again and do what they did against the Jets and the Vikings and really limit this Panthers team, um, what they can do on the ground and force them to beat them in the air in cold weather, I like your chances for the Lions defense. I think that opens up a real whole world of possibilities for causing, for getting those sacks we talked about with Sam for Houston as well, or for James Houston, as well as the rest of Aiden Hutchinson and crew. And also makes it just, I think, that much easier to force them into mistakes when you're forcing Sam Darnold to sort of be the guy that's going to get the Panthers over the hump. So hopefully that's what we see out of the Lions. We see them limit that rushing game from the Panthers, and really force them to do something they don't want to do in weather that isn't great for throwing the football. So those are sort of what I think is going to happen. I think the Lions can go ahead and get the win here. I think, as K Diggs points out here on YouTube, yeah, the Lions also have to be able to run the ball. I obviously Jamal Williams is having a ton of success when it comes to scoring touchdowns. But I think, as mentioned, the weather conditions aren't going to be perfect for throwing the football. So to give Jared Goff the ability, and one thing the Lions have been doing really good over the 6-1 winning streak is converting on third downs and even fourth downs. The best way to convert and have a high percentage there is to put yourself in short yarded situations on those downs. And how do you do that? You do that by setting the tone early on first and second down by having a successful running attack. So if they can do that and put Jared Goff in the offense in really good position and ability to convert in third and fourth and short, we'll hopefully see this Lions offense continue to chug along and succeed like it has been over this 6-1 winning streak, because they've been doing a lot of that. DeAndre Swift's getting healthier. He's starting to see more reps. We're seeing Jamal Williams, of course, the success he's had, and then they've had some other people contributing too off the bench. So, it's exciting times. It's good to see this offense clicking. We have Frank Ragnow, who was questionable with his toe, but he'll be out there. And really, most of the injuries to the Lions aren't on key players. So it's fantastic timing as they're making this playoff push, that most of the injuries are to players who aren't key players, and they're relatively healthy compared to some of the other teams here that are trying to do what the Lions are doing and make it to the playoffs. So that's what I think about today's game. I think the Lions again. I think they're going to come out of North Carolina with a win. Certainly not a gimme game, but something I think the Lions, as long as they continue to play the way they've been playing, no question in my mind that they can't go down there to Bank of America Stadium and get a win. But let's take a look now at what that means for the playoff picture, because ideally it could happen if everything goes the right way, where the Lions for Christmas Day could wake up to the fact that they have a playoff spot uh, and a top two pick. Now, neither of those will be locked in because there's still 2 more weeks to go. But depending on the outcomes of some of the games, could position them to that point. So the first game we want to take a look at is the Seattle Seahawks, who will be traveling to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. In that game, you want the Chiefs to win. Currently, the Seahawks are the other team besides the Lions that are sort of on the bubble there. Both of the teams at 7-7. Obviously, Seattle has the head-to-head victory over the Lions because of the game earlier this season. But if hopefully Patty Mahomes and crew will go ahead and take down the Seahawks, as the Chiefs are still playing for the number one seed in the AFC. They're currently behind the Buffalo Bills, so something for them to play for, and hopefully a reason for them to give the Seahawks an L. Next up, we have the Giants at the Vikings. The Giants currently hold one of the two remaining NFC wild card spots, so that means we want the Vikings to get this win. Would certainly help the Lions out as they look to try and push into one of those last two remaining NFC wild card spots. Then you have the Commanders at 49ers. The other team, the Commanders, with one of those two remaining wild card spots. So of course we want the 49ers to get the win there to hopefully either the Giants or the Niners lose to help knock them both down and help elevate the Lions up if once they get this win today against the Panthers. I'm sorry. COVID. Lastly, we have the Packers at the Dolphins. Um, these are the four key games. And you want, of course, the Packers, who are currently at 6-8 and still sort of lingering around in that wild card race. You like to see them fall to the Dolphins. It certainly hurts me as a Packers fan to say that, but Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, for the Lions' sake, you got to lose. Just what it is. Just what it is. Um, then there are some other games, and these kind of contradict a little bit with what what is needed to help out the draft pick from the Rams, and that is you want the Browns to beat the Saints, you want the Ravens to beat the Falcons, and you want the Cardinals to beat the Buccaneers because all of those NFC South teams are sort of right underneath there in that hunt for those last two playoff spots. So if they all continue to lose, you sort of guarantee that the only one of them that's going to make it to the playoffs is going to be whoever wins the NFC South, and then you don't have to worry about one of those other three teams if they all get a loss. But as I mentioned, if you take a look at what you're rooting for in terms of a Lions draft position pick from that pick we acquired from the Rams, it gets a little messy because you actually want the Saints to win. You actually want the Falcons to win. You do still want the Cardinals to beat the Buccaneers because the Cardinals are sitting at 4-10. Um, but essentially, you want all of the bottom dwellers in the league to get a win today. If you want to see that draft pick improve that we acquired from the Rams, you want to see the Texans, who are currently 1-12-1. You want to see them beat the Titans. You want to see the 3-11 Bears pull out a miracle over the Bills. You want to see the Raiders beat the Steelers. Both of those teams are 6-8. So that one's a little bit more interesting. You want to see the Broncos beat the Rams. Both of those teams 4-10. As mentioned, you want the Cardinals to beat the Buccaneers, and then you want the Colts to get a win over the Chargers. Essentially, those are all the teams that are either currently below the Rams or they are in that same area. So you want them all to get wins so that when the Rams lose today and fall to when the Rams lose today and fall to 4-11, as you would hope they would to the Broncos, um, that would elevate you all the way to pick number 2 with just the Texans above you. So that would take the Bears, put them above you, and the Panthers and the Broncos and all those credit teams we just mentioned. It would just make sure that you're sitting there at the end of the day, currently in the number 2 spot. And that would be just a wonderful way to celebrate Christmas Day, knowing that the Lions inherit one of the 2 remaining NFC playoff spots, that pick we got for Matthew Stafford is now a number 2 pick in next year's draft. I mean, that what more could you want for Christmas at that point? A Lions victory, a playoff spot, and a number 2 pick in next year's draft. That could be our reality we wake up to. We'll talk about if it happens on Monday when we do a recap of today's game, but certainly a lot of reasons to be excited. Just want to take a moment to thank you all for tuning in and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. If you celebrate whatever holiday you celebrate, a very happy holiday, happy Hanukkah, whatever holiday it may be you're celebrating at this time. And I hope you have a joyful season and you get to spend a lot of time with family and friends, and that everyone is happy and healthy. So thanks for tuning in to the Lions Grid. Again, I'm Kevin Marhine, and we're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. If you did enjoy today's show, please help the channel grow by liking, subscribing, or following on whichever one of those platforms is your favorite. If you're watching back the recording, please feel free to head over to one of those platforms, search the Lions Grid. You'll be able to find our profiles there. And make sure you tune in for our next episode, which should be Monday, as we recap this game against the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers, and see what sort of presents we had to open. Hopefully, we'll be seeing again that Lions win, playoff spot, and a number 2 pick. Those would be 3 great gifts for this holiday season, and hopefully that's what us Lions fans will be treated to. Go Lions, and we'll see you during the next episode. Bye bye.